It all started in the Netherlands. I was born in the east of Netherlands, in Almelo. But basically, my whole life I lived in the Randstad. I got into hospitality already from a very young age. And when I was 15 or 16 already, I started to work in restaurants, in a butcher as well before school, because I liked working. I liked what it was giving back to me and learning different skills. Basically, I could debone half a cow, actually, back in the days. When I was 18, I was 17, 18, I moved to Amsterdam and I started to work at a 5-star hotel, the Hilton. And then actually everything went quite dynamic, I would say. I started to work as a junior waiter, basically in the banqueting department, and basically worked myself up as a supervisor, and started also to work in other departments in the entire F&B, I would say. I had a small step into the cocktail scene, the mixologist scene, where I worked for, I would say, a year in a cocktail bar in the city center. But I loved it very much, and I learned a lot. And I actually got, I think it was number 9 ranked in the Netherlands back in the days within the competition. It was a bit too small for me. So I was asked to come back to the Hilton to run basically, or co-run actually the bar in the Hilton, where we elevated the bar to a different level, to a more professional level. Also because of my mixologist background, then I got to know a good friend of mine there, and he actually wanted to open a restaurant in Amsterdam, and later on also in Delft, that was basically catering to my needs actually. So building up a new restaurant. Quite a large restaurant. I think it was 800 seats back then. And when I did that, also I moved to Delft to actually open up the other restaurant as well. It was a chain. I think back in the days there were 4 or 5 actually. I love doing that, but at a certain point I was also looking for something else, something different. And my girlfriend back then was Hungarian, currently my wife. And I thought, why not to Budapest? So we were looking actually to go to Budapest. It was a soft landing. We had already family there with my girlfriend back then. Yeah, so we moved to Budapest, and I started to also apply for different roles. But in Budapest, back in the days, 10, 11 years ago, you really had to speak the Hungarian language in the hospitality scene. And this was not my thing. I got into recruitment by pure chance. Somebody from Randstad, actually, Randstad Enterprise, called me and said, why don't you join? I thought, why not? It's a Dutch company. Let's see. And I started here as a junior recruiter. And I really liked it. I got into it quite fast, and they hired me because I was a Dutch-speaking person, which there was a need for. But I also realized that if I keep on doing Dutch-speaking roles, the end is quite near, let's say. So immediately I moved to English-speaking roles, and after that, I built up basically for one of our larger clients, global clients, and a big pharma. I built up the recruitment team, I think 50 FTE back then, indirectly reported to me, to build the entire EMEA recruitment team, basically. When I was working in Randstad Enterprise, I learned how to build up large teams. I did that already in previously in the hospitality. I really liked the whole corporate environment, but I also realized that I like building, and I wanted to do something really from scratch. Back in the days, the managing director of the Randstad Enterprise moved to KPMG and asked me to join, as they were looking for a talent acquisition manager to build up their recruitment team from scratch, which I did. Build up basically from scratch the whole ATS, all the processes, everything in a company of about 700 or 800 FTE. But due to the internal struggles in KPMG, just the recruitment team, I think it was 7 FTE that I had to manage or had to build, was not enough. So I also thought, like, why not global mobility, to get actually people faster into the company, but also from other firms, which I also built up. It was a smaller department, just one person, but still not enough. So then I said, let me take over the learning and development, and let's completely build it from scratch. So together with the ladies there, we rebuilt the learning and development department from scratch. We built up a competency matrix, and we had a tender with one of the suppliers to have a leadership training for about 180 FTE, 180 people managers in KPMG. yeah, if you cannot bring them in, then at least let's strengthen the team that is already there. And they had a very classic, the people managers in KPMG were very classic trained, and they were also very good with their hard skills, accounting, tax, etc., but not so much into the communication and leadership. And after a bit more than a year, I was done with that in total, building up the 3 departments they were running, and I came to the conclusion that I really wanted to build something myself, so for myself with my own values. So I had a short intermezzo with another agency. That was an agency that I was working as an external consultant, basically building up the internal team. And this made me realize that I really want to focus on building value-driven organizations. Back then, my son was also born. Currently, he's 3 years old. And this also realized that this gave a bit perspective, actually, that I needed to focus more on sustainability and ESG, and more of a value-driven search, so really giving value to a company. So I basically built up my own team, actually, from that part. I joined as well a global top 40 executive search and recruitment organization called Talenter International, which gave me a lot of depth, basically, and a lot of reach as well. And currently we are with 6 people in total, working for mostly the CEE market. And although our focus is still sustainability, both in renewables or in more the corporate ESG side, we also feel that the world is changing, and that even though sustainability is still key to a lot of corporations or a lot of companies, is that the amount of, so the AI basically also brought in new perspectives. So the reporting got a lot faster, but also the strategy changes was different due to the omnibus from earlier this year. And we are basically currently focusing more on as a generalist search, working on managing director roles for large German companies or US companies, plant directors, plant managers, and these roles basically. I got to know a lot of startups as well in my outreach, and I felt that all of the startups had the same, at least the ones that I spoke to, had the same issue: the lack of talent and how to attract the talent, but also if there is talent but we cannot hire them because we don't need a full-time marketing manager, or we don't need a full-time accountant or financial controller. How do we do that, basically? And this is how we got the idea back to gather a team of people almost working as one company. I got a team together that could help startups scale better. So we had a legal professional, we had a marketing professional, a finance professional, and a sales professional, including the talent on my side. And we tried to see if there was any market validation in the market. So we knew that startups probably don't have the cash for it. So we pitched it to a bunch of VCs. And one of them actually, where my current business partner works at, Caro Santo, and he actually was very interested because he basically said, "Oh, you're pitching the venture studio model to me." And I even though we did the research, I didn't really realize that this was the actual venture studio model, or at least part of it. And although the initial team, due to personal circumstances, fell apart, we got back together and we basically built up the venture studio model, where we are focusing on helping startups getting investment ready for VC investments. And also afterwards, we're helping them to scale. So we're helping them with the talent, with marketing, and more of a co-building, basically. Due to the fact that Caro was working at a university venture capital firm called OUVC here in Budapest, actually the only one here in Budapest, he was trying to find out if there was any best practices in the market. As OUVC was the first one in Hungary, he was looking elsewhere in other countries to see if there is any best practices, any knowledge sharing, and there wasn't. So we are currently building together with the Deep Ecosystem. It's a German ecosystem builder, basically. We are building up a university venture capital association where we are getting the best practices from universities like Munich, in Barcelona, or Oxford Ventures to join us and help us create basically a community of university venture capital firms, basically. to have a better deal flow, to share deal flow, but also to help innovation to become ventures and more compliant towards VCs, to make them investment ready, and to have more of a blueprint and to create a playbook as well for new university venture capital firms. That said, yeah, I would say this is where we are now. Our venture studio is called UniPrisma, and Prisma because of the prism, basically, where we're thinking we are like the prism, where startup brings us the idea, and basically we have a facet of new colors out of it. That was our idea. The uni is from university or unique or something in that manner. That was the initial idea, actually. Yeah.